Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
Like, look at me, Mom. I'm a giant joint.
Is this before pot was legalized, or this is before then?
It was at the same time.
Right.
It was happening.
Right. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the frustrations about recording these podcasts sometimes happens where the gear decides to give you the middle finger.
Okay.
So and I'm sure this has happened to you on stage, and probably has happened to you while filming, where you're getting everything together, and then one little thing screws you in the So from the work that I do, right, with Po Chung and in the service leadership, it's based on a Jared Diamond book called Guns, Germs, and Steel, and the idea is it's called the Anna Karenina Principle. And that it doesn't matter how strong you are in your strengths. What matters are your defects, because sometimes even the smallest mistake or defect can actually rule you out, can completely make things fall on their face. So all of this to say that I don't know if this has happened to you while shooting a film or on stage, but I just looked over at the recorder and it was off. I turned it on, and so all the beginning is gone.
We can redo it if you want.
No, this is actually good. This is part of shooting it raw. So here now we're okay. So I don't know if that stuff is recorded, but let's just go quickly. We'll go quickly to the photographs, right? So
sure.
We're going backwards in time. We're gonna go back to the photographs. Only this time we're gonna breeze through them. So the first photo that Raugi sent me, and I've known Raugi forever. Since forever, but have only reconnected this past month or so. I'd say we met in grade 7. Probably last saw you in grade 11. And the first image we discussed was of you in your SUV. So just give the quick story of that one.
It's me in the Jeep. My sound guy is in the car next to me. And peeking out through the sunroof is my DOP, and she's got the Red Dragon camera, and we're driving around the top of this parkade. We're getting footage of the city and just some moving shots of the beautiful skyline of Vancouver
for your
stuff like that.
For your feature film.
For the feature film my first feature film that I was directing, and we're in post-production for that now.
Do you have a title that I can, or you don't want to let the cat out of the bag?
I'm not allowed to say because I'm not the producer.
Right.
I'm just yeah.
I don't know anything about this stuff. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Why were you chosen as the director?
The people who did it, I did a short film for them the year before, called The Head of the Snake, which is like a psychological kind of horror thriller. And during that time, we liked working together so much. He said, "Hey man, I've been sitting on this feature film," and I'm like, "Yep, done. I'm in. Sure.
Sweet.
When do you want to do it?" And then a year later, we filmed it.
You mentioned that it was 13 weeks of shooting.
13 days.
13 days of shooting. Oh my goodness. 13 days.
We gave the crew 1 or 2 days off each week so that we didn't burn them out. So it took about a month, but we had only 13 days of actual filming.
Amazing.
And we shot over, 90 hours of usable footage.
Wow.
Like that's not including all the stuff that was not usable. So
describe the red that people don't know. What is it?
All I can tell you is that you can probably describe it better than I can. Is that it's one of the, I guess it's a very popular camera to use for making movies. It shoots raw, like you're a podcast, which doesn't necessarily make it easier to work with afterwards, but you can do more things with it, because it's raw. So the files are really huge, but you're getting everything. You're getting all the detail, And then that way you can really pick and choose how you want to use these shots, as opposed to, I don't know what other cameras or companies, but if you can't shoot RAW, then you're kind of confined to whatever that camera is capable of capturing.
Right.
But you can probably expand on that a bit more.
So your relationship with your DP, which is director of photography, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so your relationship with her goes back how many years?
Oh, 0 years.
Oh, you just sort of...
We met her. She was recommended to us for the film, and we met up with her. And as soon as we met, like, I knew it.
The chemistry was there. You could totally see in the image. So in the image,
the chemistry is there. We immediately cared.
Nice. About
and for each other, which makes it really easy to work. Because I'm always considering her, and she's always considering me.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's what made it. Often I would be like, "Is it a little dark?" And then she would go, "Oh my God, I was just thinking it's a little dark.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can tweak this." I'm like,
right.
yeah, okay, we got a couple of minutes.
Nice.
And then she would have awesome suggestions. So we really.
Is the crew? Was the crew mostly based in Vancouver? Yep.
So most of the crew was found by Leia, the DP.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
So she would find. Yeah. So she. Which is common, I'm like, well, okay, if you got people that you like, that you can work with, let's go try to get them first.
Sure.
Instead of me imposing, strangers on you. Right. So she had a team that she had worked with before, and she brought them on. I didn't need to, because I trusted her.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need to vet them. And they were great. Everybody came on board. Everybody understood. It was a very low budget film,
mm-hmm.
and everybody is punching above their weight class.
Sure. Wow.
So yeah.
So we'll quickly jump to the other image, which is of you dressed up as an Asian. Well, who cares? Asian, not Asian, but dressed up as Elvis Presley. But they wanted an Asian as Elvis Presley.
They wanted it. Yeah, it was for a film, and they wanted. The call went out. It was maybe 18 hours. Or something, that's why.
Advance notice, yeah.
Advance notice. So it's like, So I'm like, whose fake boa is this? It's probably my daughter's, right? And that was my fuchsia shirt, and that's my wife's sunglasses. And then I had sideburn choppy things, but they weren't great, so I filled them in with
mm-hmm.
pencil,
mm-hmm.
and that was it. I became. Elvis. I did whatever they wanted me to do.
And from the previous, from the initial conversation, one of the things that because you're an actor and a performer, one of the things was that you kind of in a way need to cultivate a lot of self-portraits or portraits, not necessarily self-portraits, but a lot of images that you show to your audience. Yeah. So I thought it was interesting, and I'd like to go back to that. That you were like, well, because of this job or this mindset or who you are in terms of as a performer, images are very important. Images of you are important to share with the audience. So talk again about that relationship of the connection to the masses or to your fans or whatever.
I came to realize that connection is pretty important. Because without the fans, without the people watching, you could say our business doesn't exist. I could still do a show, but without any audience there, it's not a show.
Of course.
So part of our job now is to have an online presence, is to use social media because it helps people who like my acting, people who like my shows and things like that, to feel connected to me.
That's okay. So how much has that changed from when you started?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, I remember when I started acting, the internet wasn't even really a thing.
Well, it didn't exist.
Yeah, right? like, I didn't have a computer. There was no, like, this before Facebook. Like, this whole thing was just completely different. Maybe every once in a while, someone might recognize me from something on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You know, how I got my agent was, at that time, I think I got like 20 photo headshots and resumes together, and I hit the bricks.
Yeah.
I looked up their addresses in a phone book, and I went to them. Right? Like, that's crazy.
I love the delivery of phone book. Can you imagine what that is?
Can you imagine that? Right? Isn't that crazy?
It's a book with phone numbers in it.
I know. Like, everyone's number in the whole city, right?
Yeah.
And I had a pager.
Uh-huh.
And I had a fistful of quarters.
That's awesome.
Like, that was the deal, right? Like, your agent paged you.
Yeah.
You phoned them.
Yeah.
And then if you were lucky enough to have a fax machine, it would get faxed to you. If not, you went to the corner store.
Mm-hmm.
You got faxed, and then you auditioned 1 or 2 days later.
Sure.
Like, everything was just so much slower.
Right.
But now, I could get an audition right now, get everything sent to me on my iPhone. I'm submitted electronically, and then I'm auditioning tomorrow morning.
Wow.
Or maybe even tonight.
So,
if, you know that.
So would you say that things happen faster, but would you say that there's a lot more media being produced? Like, there's a lot more work for actors? Would you say everything's been increased?
Yeah, I think everything's been increased. I would have to say that. You know, there used to be a thing like pilot season where, you know, everyone would go to LA and try to get into pilots and stuff like that. And there still is a pilot season, but really, you know, with the platforms like Netflix and Amazon, even Facebook and Disney, like, there's pilots all year round.
Okay.
You know, people, like, the content is insane.
Right.
So.
Okay. So as an actor, so just to rewind, to put some context, because that may have been lost, but
Sure.
Essentially, Raugi and I went to the same high school and have known each other since grade 7. The last thing I can really remember about Raugi is being in a play, and I was on the sort of the lighting and sound crew. And so of seeing him and doing the rehearsals and the performances and then suddenly discovering him, like, 2 or 3 decades later, seeing
right.
you're still in acting, still in acting. I'm totally floored. And in a way, we haven't seen each other in all these years. And so you have been thinking about, steeped in, like, completely, probably you've been teaching as well, from what I understand. You've been teaching this craft and the whole the depth of understanding that you have for acting is just, that experience is huge. One of the things that I was really inspired by was an image that you sent over of you made up as somebody, I don't know, 20 or 30 years in the future from now. So somebody like an elder gentleman with the makeup. So how would you say you're thinking about the craft and about your own expertise or has matured?
Yeah, that's a good question. That timeline is super clear in my mind and in my heart. And I'll try to be quick about it, because it's you know, these are massive events in my life. But, you know, I started out angry, which I don't regret, because anger can get you far, but only so far.
Huh, okay.
In this business, so my body was bigger, like muscular, like my neck was thick and my chest was thick, and I was this young, kind of really in your face kind of actor, and that's exciting. But then after a while, casting goes, "Hey, dude, what else can you do?"
Uh-huh.
Right? They're like, "Can you be vulnerable?" And I'm like, no. What does that mean?
Hulk smash.
So, yeah, exactly, right? So now the industry, the craft is asking me to transform. And then I had to take a real hard look at myself. And then, really long story short, I move into the idea, the concepts of love, and how to be in love with my craft, how to be in love while I'm acting, even when my characters are doing terrible things, that kind of thing. How do I embrace the world with my heart? And that really transformed the way I worked, the way I saw things. That's kind of when I started to teach more. And then I started to really see my responsibility in cultivating the generation of actors coming up behind me.
Okay.
And they don't necessarily have to be young. They could be like 65.
Sure.
They're still baby actors. Because I realized that if I become afraid or whatever, and I don't cultivate those coming up behind me, my industry is going to die.
Okay. So you've been transitioning a little bit into directing, and
yes.
I thought what you said was earlier about, it's true that on stage, you're right. The stage, essentially the frame of a stage is fixed. And so if you want to have a close up, or if you want the attention of the viewer to be on a small gesture or whatever, you have to kind of remove everything else, or else it'll get lost. Whereas with a camera, you can just tighten the frame or whatever. So how do you feel somebody who is learning to become an actor, how do you help them transition from stage to is that an easy transition to go from stage to film or TV?
That would depend on the individual. But in terms of technique, it's pretty easy. You just have to practice. Like anything, like a kung fu, right? And I use terms like kung fu, or because these are I consider artful things that are action driven.
Okay.
And all acting is a craft. However, acting is action.
Got it.
And I don't mean that physically. In fact, I mean that quite oppositely. I know that's not a word.
No, it's okay. No, in the opposite. Yeah.
Your heart. When I say something in front of the camera, you should be seeing or feeling what I'm doing.
Right. Okay.
Even though I'm still.
Right.
And that transition, and that's what I find coaching and teaching exciting, because that is different for every person. I have techniques and things like that I can ask people to do. But ultimately, those techniques show me what kind of person you are, how you think. So then I can go, okay, hold on. Forget what I said. Do that thing you just did now. What are you thinking there? What's happening? What part of the universe is aligning inside you for you to say that line just like that right now? And I try to inspire people to see themselves, to honor themselves, right? To really endeavor to know who they are, so that they can give the most authentic acting that they can do. I don't want them to act like me, because that's not who we're casting.
Sure.
Like I said earlier, like casting's maybe the biggest part of the success of a project. People cast Raugi because of the way I act, because of how I think. They can tell, like, no, Raugi's good for this project. It's just there's something about him. But we all have the same techniques, right? But what's different is my spirit. Nobody has my spirit. So
have you had a project that was so challenging that, because at the end of it, it's also your job. So you come in every day, you show up. It's work. So you do the work. Your work is very, it's in sometimes your work is very emotional, and sometimes it's very physical. Okay, so that's your thing. But have you ever had a day or a set of days where the work itself put you through the ringer that created a real awakening or kind of sparked a real change, or has that ever happened?
Yeah, that happened to me, fortunately, earlier in my career, in my last year of theater training at UBC. And it's pretty important because I was cast in this lead part of a play called A Lie of the Mind by Sam Shepard. And the character is Jake, and he's like very broken. And the play opens with he thinks he's killed his wife. He thinks he's beaten her to death. And so I didn't have any safeguards. I didn't have any techniques. I just went in
raw
to this guy. Yeah. And I started doing weird, crazy things, and I isolated myself. Like, I didn't talk to anyone, and I just kind of lost myself in this character. What I did, I had a bench, a weights and bench press in my living room. So all I did was I ran my lines, I smoked cigarettes, and I did bench presses. And occasionally I would break shit against a wall because I was like losing my mind. And then I would go to school. And
do you think? So was that maybe a factor of you being younger, just being young?
Yeah, that was a factor, and I just wanted, like, I never played a part like that before, and I just wanted so badly to do a phenomenal job because I love this playwright so much. And then when the play closed, I was the same guy. I stayed as that guy for a good month.
Oh, wow.
And my friends were like, "What is your problem, man? Why are you being
pleasant.
such a dick?" And I'm like, and now immediately I'd be like, "What's your problem?" Like,
oh, really? Like you really, wow.
Yeah, I just like lost it.
So this is completely tangential to, but I find it fascinating. So you lose yourself in a character enough that it kind of sticks, enough to carry, like the echo kind of, is residual enough that you're kind of carrying it into, for the following month, right?
Yeah, it was great, and I say, fortunately, it happened to me then, because when I discovered what had happened, I had to go through a psychological process on my own of like, oh, this is not me, this is Jake, who's walking on the furniture right now. Maybe I'll just sit down for a second, and then eventually I was able to separate him from me and let him go. But it's through that process that I was able to be safe in my acting from that point forward.
Okay.
So it didn't matter who I was playing, what I was playing. I could always find a way to leave that character on set, leave him at the theater, or bring him home and contain him until everybody went to bed.
Right.
And then go through a little process of like, okay, just like, it's okay. Nobody. Yeah.
So somebody who's in their own, like somebody who's, okay, so photography is not a performance in the sense that photography somebody who's using cameras to capture images and to try to tell an interesting story, they're not necessarily doing a performance, although it can be that.
Right.
But in acting, be it on stage or on, in film, you're being watched. There's a viewer that you're catering to in a way. You're trying to elicit feelings or impressions in a viewer. So how can you make connections from that to say somebody who's either when you're shooting a film with a camera or making images, stills? Is there a connection?
How do you mean exactly? Is there a connection?
Could you give some advice, or could you talk about, share it to a photographer to say, okay, listen, when you're making an image, it's not just about you. It's also about what you're going to elicit in the viewer. Right.
So I think I can speak to that from a filmmaking point of view, which I think is slightly different from a stills photography point of view. So I don't know, if this was cut off or not, but I was talking about how when I'm making a film, I'm creating the frames, I'm creating these shots to tell the story, and then I'm inserting actors into these shots, and then they speak the lines. If I want people to feel like sad, the actor helps, but all the strings of images that I'm going to put together before and after that actor talking, I'm trying to make that happen in those images. Mm-hmm. And I say it's different for filmmaking because there's soundtrack, there's Foley, like I can, you know what I mean? Like you can do there's so many other things that layers. Whereas, I've looked at a photograph before and just cried because that photograph touched something inside me, mm-hmm. right? Like a piece of art, mm-hmm. A painting or whatever. So
here, let me kind of wrap things together in the sense that, okay, you sent me 5 images, which I will put on the website. They're essentially portraits of you, which as a performer are necessary. And each one tells an interesting story. And in a way, for a viewer who kind of comes to see them, they synthesize their own sort of impression of you, right? So here's a question. How is this different from, say, a 16-year-old girl who does selfies every 5 minutes?
I would say I don't think it's that different.
What? No, come on. There has to be a difference.
Why can't that be her expression?
Okay.
Now, right? Okay. Because 10 years from now, if she's doing the same thing and she actually comes to me and opens the door to dialogue about it to me, I'll say, well, it seems like your expression of art has not changed in 10 years. What do you think of that?
That's a good point. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But because she's 16 now.
Of course.
And she's doing selfies all the time because the world tells her to do it. She's self-conscious about, the story that I see, right, from a grown-up point of view who has a 15-year-old, goes, the story I'm getting is she's self-conscious about the way she looks because of the angle that she always does.
Right.
She's worried about missing out on a post. She's worried about likes. Mm-hmm. She's using so many filters. She always makes sure she's doing something cool, or she wants people to know that she has money or whatever. And so to me, I'm like, okay, that's a story I'm getting from you. Now, it may not be interesting to me, so then I'll stop looking at it.
So how do you take it up a level?
Oh, man, in my opinion, and this is what I try to do when I do selfies and stuff, which is hard, is to be as honest as I can be.
Okay.
So when I do like I don't take pictures of myself before every audition. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But that particular one, I'm like, I feel cool about this. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
I want to share this.
You're talking about the Elvis one.
The Elvis one.
Yeah, it's full. I love it. The spirit is great. Yeah.
Their spirit is great. So I try not to put stuff online that doesn't have that. I know I'm not successful all the time because sometimes it's just producers going, hey, man, post something.
Right. Oh, okay.
I'm like, oh, okay, fine. And I'm like, hey, at the crafty truck, like. Have you
ever had a moment where because for example, listen, like with Shark Rescue, okay, so one thing you may not have known is that from 2009 to 2016, I launched this thing called Shark Rescue to help raise awareness about the plight of sharks being endangered. And one of the things, so that was me actively trying to raise awareness. And I was putting all this energy to make it happen. And then, but the thing is, sometimes something would become super popular. Right. And sometimes something wouldn't, even though the amount of energy I'd put in would be the same, so I couldn't predict why. For example, like with your self-portraits or with your work, do you have any ideas? Have you ever thought about how it is that sometimes something that you do and you don't know why it is, but became super popular, went viral or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
and other things which you think would be good kind of just get not noticed. So have you faced that as a performer?
Yeah. Sometimes I'll post something about like an awesome show or something like that, and it'll just get like a mediocre response. But then I'll post a giant steak that I made that night that I ate at midnight, and it's like it goes like it blows up.
Right. And how do you?
And I'm like, okay, like I have no control over that. It's obviously,
isn't that kind of weird?
I have control, I guess, over how much effort I put in, but that's about it. I have no control about, and it's weird. Yeah, it is. It's very weird. And then if I look at like my Instagram, right, I'll post different things and I'll look at my likes, and they're the same. They're like which makes me kind of go, oh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Maybe that means no matter what I'm posting, it's in the right spirit, right? Because it's the same amount of likes all the time.
Right. That's interesting. Okay, yeah, okay.
And to me, I'm kind of okay with that.
Sure. You know,
well, I find that interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm also fascinated by communications and publicity and performance and all that stuff. And it's so confusing to try to understand why some things capture the imagination, because maybe it's that you've produced something that hit a nerve in the collective unconscious or whatever you want to call it, that people all of a sudden go, holy shit, that really that speaks to me at this moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are people out there who are good at, you know, like they're posting viral stuff all the time. And to us, or to me, it may be like, oh, I don't find this particularly important, but I just watched it.
Right.
Like, what?
So, of your characters...
I'm part of the millions,
right,
you know, that have just watched it.
Right. So of the characters that you've done, you know, either on stage or on TV or in film, which character would you say that almost confuses, but confounds, that kind of like runs against what you're just like, I have no idea why this... Or is there one where you actually had a response that was so powerful, you must have been like, well, I can't put my finger on it, but that hit a nerve. So has that happened, or are you always really clear?
The closest thing I have to that example, and I don't think it was because of me. Like I was part of the machine. But people reacted to them because of the show. Right. Or the writer or the writing or the director. And then they see my character. So I think it's kind of happened. My two most popular characters, you know, are Dang from the kids show, Mr. Young, and then Cam Fong from the J-Pod TV series based on the book by Douglas Copeland. And J-Pod was popular because of Douglas Copeland. Right. You know, people hear, like, they know him. You know, they love him. He wrote, like the first 6 episodes and then had a hand in all of them. And then my character just became, like, I brought my own uniqueness to the character. But the character's written a certain way. You know, he's like this mafia whale, right? And then people just loved him. Right. Like, just, you know, and then on Mr. Young, the Dang character wasn't really meant to be in tons of episodes, but he became so popular with the kind of 8 to 12-year-old demographic of young boys because of his craziness, whatever. And then he just like blew up, you know, like, if I wasn't in an episode, I wouldn't be on set, and then people lining up for autographs would be like, hey, where's Dang? Right. And then they'd be like, oh, well, he wasn't in this episode. And then so I started coming in, right, even though I wasn't on the episode, because they wanted my autograph. Wow. So those are the only two kind of, and I get why, but I can't say that it's because of something. Right. No, I understand. I did. Yeah. I get it.
Okay, Rogi. Listen, we've been talking shop for a while. I really hope all that stuff we recorded earlier is great. I'm gonna put your photographs for sure on the
Sure,
site.
man.
I'd love to have you. You're so good to catch up for sure, for sure.
Same here, man. It's so good to see you. It's not the same seeing your pictures and
No, of course,
all the
of
awesome
course.
stuff you're
Of
doing,
course.
but this is really nice, man.
Thank you so much for joining me, Randall Fancy, for this episode of Shooting It Raw. I really appreciate it. If you want to learn more about the show in general or today's guest in particular, be sure to check out the episode notes at www.shootingraw.com. That's shooting-it-raw.com. I appreciate everyone who takes some time out of their day to give Shooting It Raw a listen. So get out there, make amazing photos, and be sure to appreciate how amazing the world is. Gratitude and a sense of humor